Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to take a nice, gentle time through nature, through the time in which we connect with those beings around us, and also a time where we say, I would just like to be guided by something in nature that doesn't have to pull on me, take me somewhere else, kind of hit me over the head to find out a message. What we're talking about today is we're going to be talking about the birds around us, those feathered creatures in the sky, those that crawl along the earth, and perhaps even so, those that just want to gently guide us and say, "Ooh, I caught you out this little corner of my eye. And wasn't that a joy?" Maybe that was just a message. And isn't it something just to help us delight in the day? Here we are in the year 2024, and the days are heavy. Sometimes they're really light. Sometimes I feel like we're bumping into everything around us. And other times we just want to lay on the floor and say, I just need to be one with the earth. So today, my guest is Catherine Bastedo. Her meditation cards are called Bird Vibes, Spiritual Insight Through Birds. So let's take a little journey today into those feathered friends that just kind of catch out the corner of our eye, those that maybe we seem to say, "Oh, who's calling me today?" Or perhaps say, "I would love to be able to expand my awareness. How can I do that?" Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Dr. Jeanette. I'm most pleased to be here.
I'm so glad to have you to talk about these bird cards that you have because I'll tell you, I noticed them here in New Orleans, and we think of a special bird, a cardinal. And as soon as I picked up your cards the other day, it was in a winter scenario. And I'm thinking, it's hotter than you-know-what here today, and I'm seeing a cardinal on my fence. And isn't that such a contrast? Don't you think sometimes we think we get a story about a bird, a message about a bird, and we think that we're always firmly encased in that, instead of allowing ourselves to say, "Oh, hello, I'm so happy to see you"?
Well, I think we do get caught up in the stories around birds, and cardinals are a great example. I see them regularly here at my feeder, and I often have people telling me that they've seen a number of cardinals together, and cardinals mean something to them spiritually. Sometimes even it reminds them of someone who has passed over. And in my cards, as you've seen, there's a spiritual message with each card, and there is, as you mentioned, a cardinal in the deck, and the message there is about seeking the kernel of truth.
Yeah,
absolutely. The cards are meant to help someone with meditation and to facilitate understanding so that someone can look at that card and see what chakra it's in, because all of the cards are divided into the chakras, and they can see the attributes of each chakra connected to the birds. And that can help them in turn think, well, if I'm meant to seek the kernel of truth and it's in a certain chakra, then how does that relate to my life right now?
Right. Do you think sometimes we say these are little guideposts along our way? Many times people will say, but I need an answer. I need something to tell me, versus saying, oh, you're just here to open the door, and perhaps say, my heart and my soul, my spirit will guide me through this. And that's what birds are really all about, because they're so fleeting. We see them, 2 seconds later they're gone. Perhaps?
I think birds have been messengers from time immemorial. going back thousands of years, people have seen birds as messengers, and some of them are almost archetypal messengers. People know about the symbolism of an eagle or a dove that goes back for so many thousands of years. And other times the bird may be less well known, and we need to study it. Sometimes studying the habit of the bird can help us because we see the attributes of the bird. Are you familiar with a grackle, for example? It just came to my mind. It's a bird that we see in our lawns here, and like a blackbird. It's in the family of blackbirds. It has an iridescent blue plumage, and it's quite striking. And some people don't like grackles because they're a bit like crows. But to me, it meant that this is a bird that isn't afraid to show off its steps. It struts along, and it just reminds us to be powerful and to accept who we are and to use our talents and even to show them off. So there are just various meanings in one bird, I think, and someone may look at it one way and another person a different way. It's what it means to each of us. Don't
you think sometimes also, too, Catherine, is that we notice birds because they seem to be, just as you shared, an attraction. You know, here in the South, after a hurricane, we might start to see birds and we're going, where did they come from? I've never seen them before. They might have been at a bird store, and the store is damaged and the birds got released. People may have kept them in their homes. Homes were damaged and they were released. Or the wind or the water may shift their habitat, or maybe ask them to, there's going to be a storm there. We want you to fly somewhere else. Just as they are a bird of nature, are they not also true, showing us how unique we can also be in our own ways?
Oh, I think that's very much true. And with climate change, the bird's habitat is changing. The other day, I saw and heard a Carolina wren here, and it happened to be a day a very close friend of mine who lives in South Carolina had texted me about something important, and she was undergoing some health issues. And I thought, isn't that odd? I've never heard or seen a Carolina wren here. It's at the northern limit of their habitat. And here's my friend trying to reach me from South Carolina, and I hear a Carolina wren. And it was just so perfect. It was lovely, really.
Do you find that you have a lot of smaller birds in your local area?
Oh, yes. Yes, we have many. But I think yesterday I was doing a Reiki class because, as you know, I teach Reiki, and I had a small class, and I call it Reiki Under the Pines, and I have lovely big white pines in my yard, and I've set up a sacred circle in the back, and people feel enclosed in this space. I have prayer flags around in a circle, and the pines and maples, and it's quite pretty. And people walk in through an open entranceway over a heartstone and so on. So it's quite magical, I think, and people enjoy that. And the birds seem to come in, particularly when I'm teaching a class. So one of the women had said her favorite bird was a chickadee. And in my cards, that chickadee is all about celebration. And the chickadees kept coming in, and they were so at ease, you could tell, because they were perched. There were two of them perched on a branch, and they were preening and cleaning their feathers. It just looked as if they had not a care in the world. And there we were talking about Reiki. It was really quite fun, and a number of the birds were coming in, and people seemed to feel that they were there and seeing so many birds because perhaps the birds were drawn to the energy.
It's almost as if you have some other members coming in for the class, right?
That's right, exactly. And when I talk to people about birds or other aspects of nature, trees, plants, what have you, as totems or symbols, I usually say that if you have a robin or whatever would be a most common bird for you in front of your house or where you live every day, and it's just doing its own thing, that's not necessarily meaningful. But if it's acting in a strange way, or if it's a surprise visit, or if it keeps trying to catch your attention, that's the time to think, well, what does this bird mean? What messages does it bring? And then often people who have my cards will look up the bird because it focuses on birds of North America, particularly Central and Eastern North America. And they will look up the bird and say, oh, that's what it was trying to tell me.
Yes. You know, there were so many times that a random bird I would notice outside, and I would say, oh, that's just so pretty, and I would just sit with it for a minute and let it pass. But one time, I don't even remember what was going on in my life at the time. However, I was doing a radio show, and I looked out the window, and on my fence was this huge owl. And it was spinning its head around looking, and it stayed there for the entire time that I did the show. And then it just went off. And I noticed that for about a month. It kept showing up every time I was doing a show. And it was just so interesting to just meditate and say, thank you for joining me.
That's a perfect example. And then you would look up the owl, regardless of what particular owl it would be. The symbol of, if you know what one, even better, but just owl in general. What does it mean? Is it bringing you wisdom, insight into what you're talking about? Right. And in the same way, when I was starting on my career in Reiki and going to Reiki classes, every time I went to a class, I would hear the raven. Now, we have ravens around here. They're not that common, but they have a very low, unmistakable croak. And raven is a symbol of magic and about using your problem-solving intelligence and the reminder that you have the power and the resources and the understanding. So if I had moments of doubt, then I would think, oh, raven saying, it's okay, you can do this. And even yesterday we heard the raven. It croaked at the perfect time when I was giving someone some Reiki. And oh, there's the raven. Did you hear that?
Yes. And I think they almost are a sense of peace, with that connection. Many times people will say, I don't have a connection to nature. It's just out there. I pass through it, whatever. And right now, I think in the year 2024, a lot of people are starting to open up to, oh, did you see that cloud? Can you smell that flower? Oh, look at what's crawling on the ground. Oh, I can hear something. What is that? Is that a bird? And I think many times people are saying, I notice it, but I'm not connected to it. However, really what your cards are about is saying, if you notice it, take it to the next step and say, I think I would like to become a seeker of the nature world around me. And when you're a seeker of the nature world around you, you'll start taking clues from what shows up for you and say, that is just so cool. If you pull one of your cards and say, that's so interesting, and just move to the next day and thank the nature for being there for you. Sometimes they bring peace. Sometimes they bring grace. Sometimes they bring companionship when people are so alone, correct?
And I think it's a reminder also of how interconnected everything in nature is. So if you start looking at the birds, then you notice, well, what's that bird eating? And maybe what is the prey that attacks that bird? And why are these birds needed if I don't particularly like some kind of bird? But maybe there's a reason for them being around because they spread seeds or they fertilize, whatever. There's an importance of the connection of everything. And I think also, just going back to what you said a minute ago, I think there's started to be a new awareness during COVID. And when people were very much on their own, I remember the time when I couldn't even walk with anyone. Luckily, I live near woods and near a lot of nature around me. But even if you don't, people could go for a walk on a city sidewalk, and nature's all around us after all. And it was something that comforted people, I think. And I started writing articles about joy walks and going out and really focusing on what you were seeing in meditative walks where you could find happiness by noticing it almost as if you had a small child with you who notices the earthworm on the sidewalk, and you could see it from a different perspective. So I think we needed to teach ourselves to have a childlike vision again and understanding and see things in a new way.
Yes. I noticed after several natural disasters, for here it's hurricanes, many other areas it's fires, sometimes it's floods. We have floods too. But a lot of nature will be wiped out, so to speak, moved on, perhaps transitioned. And definitely I just pulled the card from your deck, and it was brown pelican. nurture yourself.
Oh, yes.
And,
yes.
There's this one big road that goes across the lake here, and it was always noted that when you cross the lake, the pelicans would be like riding along next to you. I mean, I can't tell you, I would always see it, for probably decades. The pelicans would ride along with you. And then after the hurricane, there was no birds. Nothing was at the lake. Everybody noticed there was a silence of nature. There was nothing around. And one day, it was about a year and a half later, everybody said, the pelicans are back. The pelicans are back. How can we keep them here? And everybody wanted to nurture the ground to be able to give them a land where they could nest again. And I think sometimes we want to welcome them back after disasters and say, thank you for coming back to us. And that's a sense of hope for many people. Do you think perhaps that's what conservatories are about? That's what, all of these nature places are all about?
Well, I think they're about many things. They're about helping us preserve nature for the future, for our children, our grandchildren. They're helping us to understand nature better so that we're more aware. They're helping the birds and other aspects of nature in so many ways, and all of these shelters for birds. When a bird is injured, you can, I don't know there, but I'm sure I've read that during the hurricanes there too, people were taking care of birds that were injured, or when there's oil in the water, that sort of thing. That there are people who know how to, and teach volunteers even how to help birds, and that gives us a sense of feeling good that we're doing something for another creature. Interesting that you mentioned the pelicans, because the words on the card for the pelican are to nurture yourself.
Yes.
And to look after yourself, and only then can you nourish others. So if you're helping the pelicans, you're performing an act of nurturing.
Yes, because what they really needed was marshland on the end of our coast, and it had all been washed away, by the storms. Yeah. So they really were trying to ask them to come back. They were providing things that would really help them to nest. And when they did nest, people were asked, don't go there, don't go take pictures, stay away. Let's let them find their natural sense to be able to come back. I think sometimes we say, I know before a storm, the birds start to move. They start to chatter. It's almost as if they're saying, be aware. I think perhaps that birds are sometimes saying, ooh, see me, I see you. And it's almost as if, stand still for a second. Sometimes people are in a rush so much all the time, they don't notice. And maybe
sometimes
they
just need a lack of noise when there's silence from the birds. Like here, it would be before what our disasters here are fires, as you mentioned, and tornadoes. And when there's a strong wind coming up and the skies go black, there's not a sound, and it's as if the nature is saying, "Be still, go within yourself." And sometimes it's the opposite. They're warbling away. I'm just looking at a picture of a house finch, which I heard this morning on my walk, and sometimes they just never stop. They sing, and the card for the house finch says, listen to their voices and experience the soothing energy of nature. Connect with nature, just as you said. And that is in the first chakra, so the birds can be show us how they can be very grounding, or they can be very in our upper chakra too. So the bird for the 8th chakra, and there's only one in this deck because that felt so special to me, is a snowy owl, which you would not see there. But even here it's unusual, but I have seen them. And it's a beautiful, beautiful bird. And it just, if you see a snowy owl, it's like, wow. And the card says, all things are possible. It's so remarkable, huge. And it says the snowy owl symbolizes pure potential.
So interesting, Catherine, you had just said that about the owl, because I think sometimes people will say, but that's not my bird in my area. That's not the one that I saw. But yet it doesn't have to be the exact one. It can be in the family of the birds.
Exactly.
Because, right, because I think this was like I don't know, maybe a barnyard owl or whatever. Who knows what it was. I just took the word, that is an owl, and it brought peace. And that was it. Perhaps?
Well, I think you're quite right. And I remember I was picking a card for someone on the west coast of the United States. And I picked the card, and it was an eastern meadowlark. And I thought, oh, dear, like, this is not a bird that they're going to know. But I always go with my instinct and what I picked. And I said, honestly, I picked an eastern meadowlark. Oh, the person was so excited. That's a western meadowlark is our state bird. Well, it was a different type of meadowlark. I thought, oh, phew, okay. Birds, when a person chooses a card, they always tell me that it's the right message. So I use them a lot during retreats or before Reiki sessions, and it helps people talk a little bit about what's going on in their lives as well. Help them think about why that bird came to them.
Do you think perhaps, Catherine, in our younger years, I think, when I think back in the 50s and 60s when I grew up, birds were around all the time. I'm thinking now, and there's one bird that's always here in my area. It's 5 o'clock, exactly between 5 o'clock and 5:05 in the morning, and it wakes you up. It's almost like a natural alarm. And there's also, it's a distinct sound here in the South, and I don't know the name of the bird, but I didn't think it was important to know the name. I just know the sound of familiarity. Because we used to live in the Northeast, and we would drive down to Florida every summer. I would always remember hearing this bird and knowing a location where I was. It was almost as if it said, you're coming back to my neighborhood, so to speak, And it's a very distinct sound. So sometimes I think when we become acquainted with nature, we say they're familiar friends. It's something that if I had my eyes closed, I might know. If I hear a sound, that might be on my vacation. Or if we looked out on the snow, we saw a robin, we knew that spring was coming. Or, different things have their own signals and pathways that we kind of have memories, and we create a lot of these memories, and that's really what kind of brings us joy in our life. Do you think?
Oh, yes, I've experienced that myself. For example, I've been to Florida many times and loved the mockingbirds there, and this spring we didn't go, and we took a little side trip to Syracuse in New York, and it was April, and there in Syracuse there was a mockingbird singing. Seemed very far north to me, but I've certainly never heard them here in Quebec. But in Syracuse, just 4 hours away from us, there was a mockingbird. And I was so happy. I thought, like you, I didn't go to Florida, but here's the mockingbird anyway saying, I'm here and spring's coming. Hang in there. I'd left snow behind me, so I like to hear something like that, a mockingbird. It certainly gave me a lot of joy to hear that mockingbird. I was stunned, actually.
If it brings our memories full circle. I know a lot of times when I work with patients at end of life, they say, did you hear that bird outside? And it may be just they themselves have heard it in their own memory, and everybody else in the room didn't hear it. I think sometimes also, too, birds can have a memory and come to you and help guide you home, so to speak. I've noticed that quite often. And then also, too, people will say a cardinal reminds them of souls that have passed. So I think many times it's what we equate with nature, how it feels to us, and it brings a good feeling to us. And then we like to say, this just makes me feel whole sometimes. It makes me know that I'm seen or I'm loved. And those simple things is really all we're looking for in life. We make it so complicated sometimes, perhaps.
Yes, and I think it's important for people to remember that they don't have to actually be outside in nature to appreciate the birds either. They can be watching a documentary on television. They can be reading books. They can be seeing pictures. They can have a calendar on their wall of pictures of birds. You don't have to go outside. Some people can't go out very easily, but birds can come to you in a way too. So and can bring the same happiness and joy. I have feathers. People give me feathers. I have this great feather collection. I'm never sure quite to do with it, but they do seem to come to me, and I find them, and I have a beautiful glass jar on my desk with all kinds of feathers in it, and that makes me happy too. Yes, they and the deck itself, I think, is. I'd like to tell people that it's a positive deck, so that even the messages that aren't brimming with joy are still positive, because they make us think about things in a positive way, and that's important. People are looking for. They may not even realize it, but I think they're looking for something to be positive about these days. There's a lot of negativity out there.
Yes. As I've always shared with patients, I said, you're looking for a soft place to land. And I always think of that just as the birds, a soft place to land. You see them on a leaf. Even though the leaf is moving, it's a soft place to land. It's almost as if it's in communion and doing a little dance, with the leaves and the trees. I think sometimes we say, can we sway with the energy around us and find harmony? A lot of times people say, oh, but they can't go on there. That's not right. They can't go over there. That's not right. And we also find that in reflection, we may have been seeing our own life in that same aspect. I can't do that because it isn't right. I can't go there because, it's a little too whatever our story might be. Sometimes birds, when you see them dancing on the trees or hopping around, it says, can you be light of self? And once you think of that, you say, can I be light today? Can I, burst out and take an opportunity? Can I see there's other possibilities? Maybe that is too another message for some people.
I think that's so, and I think each bird it's more than just the obvious physical attributes, but there's the emotional attributes of the birds as well, the mental ones. So, for example, if you picked a bird in the, say, the solar plexus, which is in the middle of your body, then that solar plexus, and I put a chart in my guidebook to help people along in case they don't know these things, but the solar plexus is about mental functioning and self-control and courage and inner strength and so on, honor and power. So one of these cards, and there's 7 in the solar plexus, would be connected to these attributes. So, for example, if you picked out of the deck a hummingbird, then you would read a little bit about the courage and the strength of the hummingbird in flying so many thousands of miles from one place to another and coming back to the same place. I really think it must be the same hummingbird that comes back to my cedar every year. And who knows where it's been, but it's gone a long way, probably further south than you are in the wintertime. And it's not very big. So that reminds us to take our courage in hand. And a sparrow, an ordinary sparrow in the city street, a house sparrow, is, I think, so feisty. They're always there. They're finding food in the city where you wouldn't think there'd be anything. And they're a reminder to make the most of what we have.
I think sometimes I find that when I travel, the first thing that would call to me is generally a bird. Because, when you get off the airplane someplace and you hear something and you say, oh, that's familiarity. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, even if you don't know what kind of bird it is, you've never heard it before, but nature is something familiar to you. And you say, oh, that sounds so cool. I think of that encourages people to say, oh, I'm okay. A lot of times people just want to know, I got this. We're okay. And nature is something that you commute.
When I go to Florida, I get out of the plane, I go to rent a car, and there's a fish crackle or making noises in the place where they park the cars, and I think, oh, now I'm in Florida, because that's not like my grackle at home, and I know I'm in the South, and I'm happy, even though it's in the middle of a big garage with a ton of cars. It just tells me, yes, you're in a new place here. I think you put your finger on it. And sometimes we don't hear them, we just see them because they don't say anything. We may just spot something and feel very lucky to see a feather, or to see a nest, or to see a bird quietly in a tree, not doing anything, maybe just protecting its young or its nest. And those are messages for us too. Take care of our people.
I think of that in closing. When the pandemic had come, a lot of nature had time to be able to settle itself down. I look back, I've got maybe 60,000 pictures on my phone. And when I look back at it at that time, I used to spot nests in the trees, a lot more birds around than it ever been. Things seemed to be shaking. And like you said, the bird would show up here that you're going, whoa, it never is usually here. But what I found also, too, is that the chaos of the human all around, cars, trucks, planes, noise, it kind of quieted down. So once nature of the human beings quieted down, nature of the nature community was starting to say, oh, we can take a breath also. So I think sometimes there's a little competition between the two kind of worlds, so to speak, and we don't notice. Perhaps those times, like people say, I was on vacation and I saw this bird and wasn't it cool? And they take all these pictures of these birds. It's yes, because that humanness, that noise that you've been carrying was turned down a little bit. Maybe?
Mm-hmm. And when we're on vacation, we tend to not carry all of our worries with us. So our mind is more open and more receptive to noticing things. It does people good. But I like to think you can take a vacation in the same way in your own home. You can take a half an hour walk. You could take a joy walk, and you can leave your worries behind. So one thing you could do is to choose a card and to say, and it may not be a card from your area. I pick a swan and I go for my walk. I'm not likely to see swans, but I think I can imagine the message, which is about seeking guidance. So as I walk and I take in the message of the swan, I'm asking for guidance. And it will come to me in a new way because my mind has been opened by just thinking about the swan and choosing that card.
Yes. You know what I also, too, liked about your cards, Catherine, is that when you look at the back of the card, sometimes people are into numbers, and there's a number on the card.
Yes.
And they would say, that's my favorite number. Sometimes you have the genus and the species of the families of the birds, the name. They may say, oh, I have that around me. Next, you have something like connect with source. You say, that is the message I need. Then you have about a chakra. And then you have a message. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways in which you can engage, actually 6 because there's a picture on the other side, 6 ways in which you can connect with a card if you pick it from one of your decks. And I think when you pick it, you say, this fits, that doesn't fit, this perhaps may fit, and just kind of like say, whatever calls out to you, just take it for the moment in time that it called to you, perhaps?
Dr. Jeanette, you are very perceptive. And I've done quite a few interviews, and that's the first time somebody picks up of all these different ways that the card can speak to a person. And when I did my very first trial deck, I was told, because I'm not a numerologist particularly, I understand the importance of some numbers and so on, but I wouldn't call myself a numerologist at all. And someone said to me, oh, your numbers need to be more clear. Numbers are really important. So back to the trial deck, fixing that up, making the numbers very clear for people. Because, yes, to some people, that's the most important part. Oh, that's how old my mother is. That's my birth date. That's whatever. That's my lucky number 7. That's a spiritual 1. The numbers are important. Or grounded number 4. So yes, there are many ways that people can look at this, and that's why I call it a meditation deck, because I like to think that somebody could take a card and reflect upon it, or maybe use it before a meditation if they like to meditate, or before a walk, as I said. But many ways to use it and add themselves more insight. And I like to feel I'm helping people help themselves by going within through the messages from the birds.
Absolutely. Well, Catherine, I had just picked out the number 9, which is my favorite number. The card says cedar, waxwing, and I don't have this bird around me, but right outside of my window is a huge cedar tree. The cedar tree has been calling to me, and every year, every month, every day, it has something else to say, and I constantly watch it. Also, too, you have about the bird, about berries and wild fruit. On the cedar tree are these big balls of seeds, and I always watch the squirrels go up the telephone pole, they fly in the air over to the cedar tree, and they eat all of these balls of seeds. And they do it almost all year long. And I noticed the other day, I said, the cedar tree is feeling very heavy. It has a bit too much weight to it. I wonder how it will do in the storms. So the cedar tree is speaking to me. Be it that I don't have this bird, but your card, the word cedar, was my message. And that's how you can you can take, what is here, and you could say, okay, how can I accommodate this story for who I am, where I am, and what I need in my life at this time, right?
Mm-hmm. And the cedar tree is a sacred tree in many indigenous cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very special tree that you have as well.
Yeah.
When I hold retreats, I often will smudge, and we burn sacred herbs, and cedar is one of them. I go outside and take a few cedar branches, and it sparks away in the fireplace, and it's a way of helping us to remove what we no longer need to carry. It's very purifying.
I think it's also, too, Catherine, to be able to say, take what you need and let the rest go. Sometimes people will say, oh, I didn't notice that. I mustn't be paying attention. Or, oh, I have to go that way. Okay, I'll go that way. So instead of being guided where someone wants to take you, perhaps see what's open in possibilities, and you make the choice. Isn't that what cards are really all about?
Well, I had one teacher who used to say, put it on like a coat, and if it doesn't feel good, take it off. And if it does, wear it.
Yeah.
And I think that's another way of saying that. Yes, you take what you want out of it. And I think that I tell people also not to try and analyze it to death. Look at the card intuitively as well. It's fun to analyze things and to know all of. I try to put in a line that's been verified by an ornithologist about the bird itself. But then that's another way of using the cards too, is learning about birds. But it can be also just very intuitive. And some people have talked to me and said, well, do I really need to know the exact name of the species? No, it may be a bluebird. It's just a blue bird. And that's fine. If the color means something to you, if you're analytical and like me and love following up on things and learning, it may be important to know it's an eastern bluebird. If it's somebody who is more perhaps artistic and we all see and learn in different ways, and maybe the color is the most important thing about that bird to another person. So I think it's important to take out of it the way we want, or the setting of the bird, because the pictures on the cards are all based on original oil paintings. And the artist who painted these cards for me put some of them in absolutely beautiful settings. So I'm looking at a northern loon here, a common loon, and you can see the bird rising out of the water just as it does in our lakes here. And you could see an autumn scene and the colors and the water. I can almost hear that loon when I look at the picture, that haunting cry. Yes. And that loon tells us to meditate and to dig and to go deep within.
I think it's very awesome, Catherine, about your meditation cards, because it's something that opens up to others their awareness. They say, I don't really know what cards are. I really don't know what to do with them. Sometimes they say, just tell me a number, and I'll look through for the number, or just sit still for a moment and I'll pull a card for them. And we will read it and they'll say, oh, that's so awesome. And, I think it's so funny. In closing, I wanted to share this little story with you, Catherine. I have 3 grandchildren, and sometimes they are a little cantankerous, screaming, fighting, maybe crying, as toddlers. Mm-hmm. They always do. And I would say that, and they would be like, all 3 of them going off at once, and I'd say, oh, my goodness, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And they'd go, no, what? And everybody would stop crying or yelling all at once. And I said, that bird out there, do you see it? Did you hear it? It's screaming too. It's calling you. And they're like, their attention was drawn outside to the bird. They totally forgot about what they were fighting about, and they never went back to the screaming and crying. So sometimes I think they're a great tool to bring us out of wherever we are. Maybe shift our energy, shift our focus, And from that day on, we would always sit with breakfast with them. I would always sit with them, and I'd say, anybody hear anything? And the 2-year-old would go to the window. He'd put his ears to the window and the glass, and he'd say, and, with his mouth open. He really didn't hear anything, but he was open to the possibility. It was just so joyful.
I love that. I do. I've done the same thing with small grandchildren. And the other thing I have done is I take them out to my pine trees, which have long, long, soft needles. And I say, look at the wind moving the pine needles. Feel the soft pine needles. And it always worked. No more crying.
Yes.
Just being in the pines and touching them and feeling them. And as you say, listening for the sound of the birds. It's a really wonderful way to initiate children to the awesomeness of nature.
And if we look back, when people used to be in the hospital, we always used to send flowers. Do you remember that? People don't do that anymore at all because flowers aren't allowed in hospitals anymore. But, because of, they're allergic to this or that or whatever.
Right.
But we always used to send flowers because people would feel a sense of peace, joy, or love. Yeah, and I think about it, when I work with many end-of-life patients and souls at that time of their life, and I'd say, open the windows, let nature in, bring some flowers in, put it here, put a bowl of some fruit of just bright colors. And when you do that, it triggers memories. It triggers our senses. It says, I am still here present on this earth for this last moment. I can see, sense, feel, hear. I am still alive. And that is the joy of nature. Yes?
Absolutely, absolutely. Even pouring water on a potted plant will bring up that earthy smell that makes me feel as if I'm outside, because it's that smell of the earth and the water, which is like the rain. It's very healing. So, yes, definitely. When we can open our windows and just take in through all of our senses, the sights, the smells, the sounds, it brings us to another place, and it helps us forget our worries and put things in perspective. I think nature also helps show us our place in the universe. We're not the only species living here, and we have to take care of each other, the other species as well.
Well, Catherine, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today, because I think that we are just really kind of becoming better seekers. That we're saying, I'm looking for something more, something outside of myself. And your card is exactly that. And Catherine, can you please share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work and your cards? That would be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. My website is Catherine with a C, so Catherine, Catherine C. Bastedo, BASTEDO.com, CatherineCBastedo.com. And the cards, you could find more information on my website, and the cards are available through all major bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Amazon chapters, main stores, and certainly can be Googled by putting in Bird Vibes meditation cards. So that's a good way to find about the cards. And I'm on Facebook under Vision Reiki, which is my business, Vision Reiki, and on Instagram under Catherine C. Bastedo. And I look forward to hearing from any of your listeners who who wish to write me about their experiences about birds or about using the cards, and you'll find my email in those places. Thank you very much for having me, Dr. Jeanette. It's been a pleasure.
I was so happy to be able to, as we say, vibe with you today, to be able to engage. And I just love the joy of, when we engage together and we're kind of in this space where we say we are open and what joy can we bring to this moment. And I really think the Bird Vibes meditation cards are exactly that. And I'm so happy to have you today, Catherine. I hope that our listeners will find something to be able to connect to. And it's not about saying, oh, well, this isn't in my area or that doesn't vibe with me. If it doesn't, get another deck. If it does, there may be something here. Or just say, you know what? I really don't know. And that's the joy in the moment, to be able to say, I think I'm going to step out, look at something different, open a window, listen, hear, and sense what's around you. And I thank you so much, Catherine, for dancing in the ethers with us today and sharing your story about the bird cards.
Thank you again, and thank you to all your listeners for being with us today.
Thank you. If you'd like to find out more information about Catherine Bastedo, again, please do check out our website. It is on the bottom of today's show page. And about being able to say, I'm open, this is such a joy. My life has been a little bit difficult today. Perhaps say, I really don't have anything on my schedule today. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to say, I'm going to go outside and see who would like to dance with me? Birds are always around us. There's different kinds. Form a relationship. Or be able to say, I'm okay. That's what they're saying too. We're okay. Enjoy your day today. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettgallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.